The time management model, popularized by Stephen Covey in his best-selling book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, was originally derived from what was called the Eisenhower method. And it's quite a simple concept. It's really powerful to use in your time management. So let's have a look at what it is. So the Covey matrix, as I'm going to call it, uses, two axes. On one axis we have things that are important or not important, and on the other axis we have things that are urgent or not urgent. And that gives us 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is in the top left hand corner is actions that are both urgent, or tasks, that are urgent and important, whereas quadrant 4 are tasks that are not urgent and not important. So let's just talk through what might drop into each of these quadrants. So typically what happens is in our quadrant 1 activities are crises, they're problems, pressing problems, and pressing deadlines, right? So all those things, those bushfires, are up in that sort of quadrant 1 activity. Whereas quadrant 2 activity are things that are really important but not urgent, so they're often not time bound, and that's about things like building relationships, planning, strategy, training, fitness, family, self, all those sorts of things, right? And so they're things that are important but not urgent. The stuff that's urgent but not important, things like interruptions, phone calls, mail, pressing matters, blah blah blah, they're often things that are thrust upon us by other people, by third parties, right? And therefore, while they might be urgent, they're not important to us in terms of what we do. And then the last one then is things that are not urgent, not important, trivia, social media, like watching and reading social media, mail, phone calls, time wasters, all that sort of stuff. And the key to this is understanding that we need to spend more time in quadrant 1, but particularly in quadrant 2. Chris Mason, who's the lead coach and founder of Mind Shop, has a great saying. He said, the more time we spend in quadrant 2 activities, the less time we spend in quadrant 1. So the more time we spend planning, training, doing all those sorts of things, the less time we will then spend with urgent crises, pressing deadlines, all those sort of things. And I've certainly found that to map out in my life. So that's a nice model, but how do we use it? Well, on the longer term, we can use it to set much longer term priorities. By putting tasks in there, we can start to say, like I've done, what are some of the things that we do that fit into each of those quadrants? And then we can start to say, well, what do I need to do with those activities that we put up there? And I think once you get those longer term priorities mapped out, then we can start to drive daily productivity by thinking about, doing something with each of those things. So in quadrant 1, there are obviously things we need to do. They're urgent and important, and we need to get them done. But quadrant 2 are those things that are important but not urgent, and we need to schedule them or time block them into our system to make sure that we get them done, because they are critically important. And remember, the more time we spend in quadrant 2, the less time we spend in quadrant 1. Quadrant 3 tasks, wherever possible, we want to delegate them. By delegate, I mean give them to somebody else within our organization, or even outsource them to somebody outside if possible. Right? And then the last one is quadrant 4 activities, not important, not urgent. If you really think about it, you should stop doing them, so we should drop them. All right? And a bit of a rule for me is that I make sure I'm doing at least one quadrant 2 activity every day. Yeah. So it might be working on a plan, it might be working on a strategy, it might be doing something, but I make sure I'm doing something important to my business that's not urgent, but I make time to do something on that task every day. All right. So use this as a backdrop when you're thinking about productivity, when you're thinking about using your 90-day productivity journal. Start thinking about what are the quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 activities that I need to do, and make sure you're focused on doing them. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you've got any questions, please flick me an email. There are plenty of other resources on the Shift website that can help you build your productivity, and particularly use your 90-day productivity journal. Thank you.